Thunderbird and Blink do a little urban spelunking. Reed shows why keeping secrets can be a little dangerous. And Marcos finally gets to have that daddy moment he's been waiting for. And then things pretty much go the way you expect they would. It's The Gifted, Season 2, Episode 3. coMplications. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Gifted. So yes, of course, your standard spoiler warning does apply. Alright, so, kind of moving things along this week. Not a whole lot of giant movement, still feels a little setup-y to me, but we did get a little action, we got a little movement, and we got a little backsliding also. But let's kick things off this week with the Morlocks. Now, like I had said last week, I was kind of looking forward to the Morlocks, to things sort of developing here. And I have to say, the initial step into the underground world, I kind of liked, was simple, did look a little, studio produced. Didn't really look so much as in actual undergrounds, but up on a sound stage. But that was all right. They did some cool, interesting lighting stuff. But I liked the idea of the kind of multi-level security that was going on. First off, we have it looking like that they're going in circles, that this seemed to be sort of a maze. It was difficult to find which direction to go, and that we had sort of, illusions, let's just say for the moment, being put up, blocking obvious entrances, making dead ends, or making throughways look more like dead ends. So it's kind of a first stage of keeping people from finding the underground. And then afterwards, a way of sort of suppressing any maybe negative mutants looking, that there seemed to be some repression effect keeping Thunderbird's tracking powers from working, and ultimately having to use Blink's powers to sort of shoot forward. And I like that also because we have here a more development of Clarice's powers here. It's not so much before, it was just she had to see the place, she had to see it. Now she is starting to be able to look through the energies that she can portal with. It's sort of just a little expansion of her power. So I kind of liked seeing that. And then when we get to the underground itself, to me, that's where things kind of fell apart a little bit. And like I had said last week, my one concern going into dealing with the Morlocks was that the Morlocks themselves are mutants that can't pass for regular humans. I mean, Erg does hit on this when he pulls Clarice to the side and sort of pulls away. Yes, she has the eye, she's got the pointed ears, She can, with a little makeup, a little adjustment, pass for human, but she is already stepping into one of those realms of someone who doesn't normally look human. Mystique, another perfect example of a mutant that might be able to change to look regular human, but in their natural form is not. And that's sort of what the Morlocks are all about from the comics. These are mutants that cannot pass in society, that have to move to the underground as a place to live. So my concern was, please, we have to see some people that really don't look human, that really have an obvious reason for not living above ground. And we really didn't get that here. I was looking, and to be honest, outside of maybe a guy looking kind of pale, I didn't really see anyone that had any type of makeup whatsoever, that had any type of appearance that looked obviously non-mutant. Now, definitely there were lighting issues. Everything was very dark in blues and stuff, and that's sort of a way to hide things. You saw crowds, you saw bodies, but it was very difficult to make out any specifics. And from a production standpoint, that's smart. Hide as much stuff as you can. Show that there's rooms, show that there's people out there, but make it difficult for anybody to get a real serious look on anyone. It's a way to hide things. Now, the only one that we did sort of get to see was shown to us was the girl that used sound to get around, and then had her vocal cords cut by the purifiers, which is just a horrible, very sad story, very horrible thing. Really can show the darkness of what prejudice can bring. But we didn't really get any visual difference there. And the only one that we were presented with was the M branding on the cheek, and how Erg put it was, this is something that the mutants themselves do to proclaim their mutants and to be proud. And I had a real problem with that. One, it's cheap. Two, again, going back to comic sources, in the dark future timeline that was really hit upon in Days of Future Past, the M branding was done by the humans to mutants to show that they were mutants so they couldn't hide. So it wasn't a mutant move to stand forth, but a branding to clearly identify them, more of a shaming type of thing. And so I really, I gotta say, from a standpoint, really had a problem with that particular choice. Also, I just don't think that people are gonna carve giant M's on their cheeks to proclaim themselves mutant and proud. Now, even if they had said that, no, this is something that that human repressors have done to certain mutants, and so that's another reason why they're hiding down there, that would have at least, I think, been a better transition to show that that was something that was done to them and not something that they've done of choice. I just don't think that type of obvious branding is really what someone would choose to do. That's not a tattoo. Okay, that's not putting your family colors or crest on you. That is a negative identifier, and that was the one thing I got to say that really kind of bothered me. So, bit disappointed with the whole Morlocks presentation. We were intimated that there might have been some further things, but what they showed us, to me, was almost as bad, if not worse, than what they really didn't show us, which was, heck, look, even just some forms in the background. Like I said, a pterodactyl, a mud person, something that really kind of stood out. And maybe there was, but because of the lighting, I sure as hell couldn't see it. Now, of course, one of the other main developing storylines that we had going on, especially this episode, was Reed's burgeoning mutant powers, and now they are out. And again, demonstrating why keeping things to yourself may not be the best. I mean, when the season opened, we had Reed almost talking to Caitlin about them, and then they got interrupted, and then it sort of never came up. And so I've been sort of waiting for this to happen. And you know what happens. If you don't say anything, then they're going to come out at the worst possible time. Which is pretty much what happened here. Definitely, while driving, not good to disintegrate the steering wheel in front of you. So, I mean, even from the whole standpoint of this is, again, really kind of what this was all sort of focused about. We had the argument between Reed and Caitlin at the end of last episode. This is the next day. She's apologizing, which is nice. Again, talking, communicating, very important. Trying to push Lauren and Reed to have their communication. Last one is about Lauren saying 15 people died and we're not talking about it. So again, this not talking thing really is what's affecting that little sort of family relationship right now. And the whole trip and journey and everything, I was kind of hoping we'd at least see them picking up the supplies. But again, them skipping that showed just how unimportant that real part of the journey was. This was all about Reed getting stressed on the phone, Kate discovering some weird stuff down in the basement, and then, of course, Reed's mutant powers coming out. Mostly all right. Do have to say, look, when the steering wheel collapses in front of you, this is just regular driving instincts. You hit the brake. You sure as hell don't try and shift anything before you hit the brake. What, are you going to rip out the transmission or something? I mean, come on. So, yes, it caused us an accident. That's to get attention, and that's to do the whole fling maneuver and get Jace involved, which I'm going to hit on in just a minute. But really, how that was handled, I have to say, was kind of annoying. And then even kind of the initial responses off of Lauren being just mad at her dad, you know, and instead of kind of embracing and understanding. And yes, he's an ex-prosecutor that prosecuted mutants. I did like that little identifier scene of like, hey, when my mutant powers were coming out, you were still all against mutants. What am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to talk? But especially with all, I mean, just, this is part of the backsliding that kind of happens in this episode. Reed should know better. I mean, he is surrounded by mutants. I mean, in some ways, if you want to cause family drama, I guess the real other obvious direction you could go in is that he's seeking out Blink's help for guidance or something, and to create some sort of like, you know, sexual jealousy thing between the wife of, why are you always with her and stuff, or, you know, something along those lines. I'm glad they didn't do that because that's kind of bad. But the fact that he has never reached out to try and at least get a hold onto this is he knows that it's popping out at bad times, especially with the filing cabinet and the wall and everything. It's just kind of like, I don't know. Again, I understand in some ways the emotions that are coming up and sort of Lauren sort of pushing back like, oh my God, you've had this and you haven't said anything. But it's also something that really brings them together. It's something that you know, she could be an ally, she could help with. So I thought maybe there was a little bit too much drama that went on with this. I did like that they finally wrapped it up, that he did talk to Caitlin, and that even her initial response of like, why haven't you said anything, was met with a hug, showing that we still love you, giving him that support, and then having Lauren see that and go, okay, yeah, this is better. We're a family. We're coming together. This is, you know, we have to show that love and support. That's what I didn't get and kind of put me in a bad way and maybe caused all of this stuff because she didn't express her mutancy, and therefore when Andy became a mutant, he didn't express it and he tried to hide it, and therefore that's when they were discovered and all had to run. Sure, I mean, I kind of get that. But at the very least, they wrap that up, and now we can have Reed now start to sort of learn how to control his powers. Big question, just inanimate objects or biology as well? Because, man, if you're giving a hug at that time, that with your wife, that would be bad. I'm going to guess just inanimate objects for now. And speaking of backsliding, Jace off pursuing mutants again, which kind of bummed me out, I have to say. We had that very emotional scene last week as he was putting his files away and telling his wife, you know, you didn't just lose a daughter, you lost a husband. I see this now. I want to move on. I want to get that together. It's like, yeah, man, there was some progress. There's some emotional progress going on there. And today's episode just starts off with going to voicemail. Yeah, I know you're upset that I'm still pursuing this stuff that we just sort of got over with. Bye. So, I mean, I get we need Jace involved and he's got to do the slide and so on. I mean, again, I get why they want to push him in this direction. I did the backsliding, considering they had so much emotional forward motion last week. And again, how long is this going to last? Yes, he connects with DC. Yes, he gets a chance to kind of look at their files. And yes, he does discover that Reed and Lauren are actually still alive, does get an eyeball on them. So knowing that they are not actually dead. I like the fact that they identified Eclipse's power, Marcos there, with like, that light show, that does sort of seem like this. At least someone's paying attention. It's just him, nobody else, but somebody is. And then finding out that they're not even going to listen to him because he's really been blackballed by Sentinel Services. He's getting the full blame for Atlanta, even though he was quitting, and that's why he was quitting, because they were trying to put the blame all on him. I don't know what direction they're pushing. Maybe they're just trying to make him as frustrated as possible. I don't know where, writing-wise, they're trying to push Jace's character in this. So in some ways, he didn't really go anywhere outside of getting frustrated and finding out that Reed and Lauren is still alive, can confirm it unto himself. The one thing, though, about that is either the police station is right next to where that accident was, or Jace has, like, the magic car. Because the accident happens, Reed and Lauren run away as quickly as possible. They hide next door. They hear the police siren, showing the police are showing up to investigate the accident. And then Reed's like, okay, we got to get out of here. So we're assuming at that point, run, get a car, go. And yet, Jace has the time to hear that all on the radio, get from the police station to the accident, inspect it, chat with everyone, spot the blood from way far away on the gate. Come on, nobody saw that. Then go in, pursue that, and then go to the warehouse before Reed and Lauren get a chance to break open the truck, which is right next to the warehouse there, to get away. So, again, I get they wanted to get Jace at this point, but that's really stretching credibility right there. There is no way all of that could have happened in that small period of time, or that Reed and Lauren took that long to find a truck the street next door and hotwire it. I don't believe it. All right, and the big kind of family story this episode, Marcos getting to have that daddy moment. Brought to you by Jaundice. Jaundice, when regular light just isn't enough. And okay, maybe that is a little manufactured. That does seem to be a little odd. On the other hand, kind of an interesting idea. The child of two mutants' parents need to kind of have the powers of those mutant parents around in order to develop naturally. Yes, it's not until puberty that most mutant powers tend to come to the fore. So, again, kind of a little reach, but also really interesting. You know, I'd be wondering if also needs to have kind of a fluctuating or a higher magnetic field around just to sort of to develop. There's some interesting ideas here. So I was willing to go with it. And of course it does bring the need for Marcos to come in. He gets to see his family. He gets to have a little connection there with Lorna, even if it's just for a moment. So, okay. You know, that's cool. Extreme jaundice, gotta have daddy's light powers. And I have to say, I did love how the Cuckoos kind of coaxed Marcos out from the diner there. Again, they're psychics. They're just the little psychic whisper, just the images sort of brought forth. It's appropriate for those powers, certainly better for them than them just sort of popping up behind them, you know, at the diner. Hi, Marcos, we need to go for a ride, but to sort of draw him out. I thought that was nice. Subtle, simple, but effective. And then we get, of course, to, I also have to say I love the car trip. I think it was Esme that was in the back. It's hard to tell the difference between all three of the Cuckoos there, I have to say. Later on, maybe with the Armbird, it's going to be a little different. But just sort of like reading my thoughts, and then he was like, that's very rude for you to say. Anyway, it was just kind of a fun little moment. I did appreciate that. But really, this got down to the meeting of Marcos and his kid. And yes, that was emotional. It was beautiful. It was nice. Lorna certainly very happy to see Marcos initially, and then kind of pulled back to suppress that emotion. I don't want to show out too much. But that first shot definitely showed how happy she was to see him. And that they had the actual kind of discussion about the fact that yes, they love each other. But just for Lorna, that's not enough right now. It's not enough just to be parents of a mutant child, but that motherly instinct to create a world on which your child is really going to be safe, to want to actively participate in that creation, to make sure that your child is safe. Totally believe that, totally like that they had the conversation. And even for Marcos, to kind of throw that back, you know, the warning of, you know, you can't stay here, this doesn't seem right, come back with me. And then the willingness to sacrifice. Look, fine, then I will stay with you. You want to do this stuff? I will do it. Lorna's smart. No, Marcos, you would never agree to do with these things. Lauren always having a little bit more moral flexibility than Marcos does, at least currently. Certainly, as far as we know, Marcos has had a darker past. But part of that past does play into it. That opening scene with the father really kind of showing why Marcos is so concerned with family, is that his own family, his father, I guess he had a mutant mother and a human dad, but human dad was not all up with the demonic powers of the mutants, left, wanted oppression, therefore that sort of schism, and therefore Marcos really entering into this relationship, really entering into being a father, wanting to be so different, wanting to be there for his family. And the fact of being pulled away from the family has such a large emotional bent. Which, as you were probably expecting, does lead us to our Seed of the Week for this week. And that is, of course, Marcos going aggro. One was just sort of beautiful scene. Two, as a parent, I could certainly understand, take me away from my family, take me away from my daughter. Yeah, I would go aggro too. Big time. But we also sort of see limits of the Cuckoo's powers right here. As they said to Riva afterwards, we can, we can give ideas, but holding that we can read minds, but inserting ideas, inserting concepts, that type of oppression, much harder. That's something that can sort of break out. And again, with that emotional pull, being away from his family, having that whole background of what his father being away from the family, Marcos so much not wanting to be that type of person, would fuel his mental, emotional power in order to break through. So that was kind of cool. Shows us limits of Cuckoo's powers and also shows us the strength of what these emotions can bring up for Marcos. So love that. Love knocking down Cuckoo number 1. Love the burning of the arms, so at least we'll identify one of them. Is that Esme or is that another? We'll figure that out. Just nice that we have a little difference finally between the 3 of them. But that assault did not last too long. Was almost a good thing of pulling out before Riva was able to manifest her powers, which was kind of interesting. I mean, honestly, I didn't know that Riva was a comics character. I thought that she was one that was created specifically for the show. But Bannon, who had dropped some great information last week, also gave me a link up to Riva's page. And she is from the comics, from a single annual back in 1994, X-Men 2 annual, where she was brought up again, just for one issue, which is, I missed that one, and so that's why I didn't know. Powers of the comics are just the same. Audio powers, uses sonic powers in order to suppress mutants' use of their abilities and also kind of throw them off their key. So that made sense, especially with the first episode we saw how she was able to keep the other Inner Circle members from using their powers. Here, kind of a little different with Marcos. Kind of interrupted their powers, but also seemed to turn it back on him, which was really unexpected. The whole burning of his own arms. Yes, I could see it sort of pushing back, throwing off his sense of balance. But then the seeming illness to push the powers back onto him, turn it back onto him, so he was burning himself with his own powers. That I did not see coming. So maybe a little twist, maybe a little addition that they're doing for the show. Kind of like that, just to keep us on our toes. Though I have to say, I really don't like the look of Riva using her powers. Just the shaking thing. It's just, I don't know, it's not impressive looking. But I guess the effects are well. But the other thing that we really get out of this episode, out of this little scene here, is Marcos's warning to Lorna. They're lying to you. They're putting things into your mind. I love that concept that Marcos is able to give that warning out, to sort of set that seed into Lorna's brain that things are not exactly what she thinks that they are. My only question is, how does he know that? Because he can't read the Cuckoo's minds. Unless they were putting something, or maybe this is Esme rebelling a little bit against her sisters. Is this some little extra gift that was given in to give him a chance to respond back, to give that warning? It doesn't seem like it. I mean, she's shown a little bit of rebelliousness, but not on this level, not yet. So, not really sure. Don't know if that's just Marcos making that assumption. considering that they were able to use the powers to kind of get him to turn and ready to leave, which, you know, is an effective use of their strength. But so we got the fact that we do have limitations on the Cuckoo's powers here, and also we got to set that little seed into Lorna's head, that things are not exactly what she believes them to be. And I think that's going to start to play itself out further down the road. All right, just a couple of small things. One, Riva's little instruction to Andy, wanting him to run security with Marcos's visit. Why? Because it's easy to stand up to an enemy. It's harder to stand up to a friend. And this is Riva's little small corruption going on, trying to get Andy to stand up against his friends, sort of testing those waters, making sure that he could be on her side, which is smart on her standpoint to get that done. And even though Andy sort of agreed with it, I love the little conversation between Andy and Marcos, how Andy was kind of like, look, bro, just this is the way it's going to be. Just don't do it again. There's still that friendly banter. He's not aggressive against Marcos, at least not at this moment. So I can see where Riva's doing it. It's definitely dark. It's definitely corruptive. But I'm not quite sure it's going to have the hold on his psyche that Riva is hoping for it to do. I think the more Andy is exposed to his friends and to see how things happen around him, that he's going to be questioning more about the inner circle. Of course, according to Angeline's warning to John there, which is one of the reasons that he was sort of freaking out this episode, pulling back in that final conversation with Clarice, is that she told John that getting Andy and Lorna out of the inner circle, probably not gonna happen. Might be too hard to do. They may be forced to kill him. So, yeah, we can see why this is bothering John, for sure, especially since the being blamed for the loss of Atlanta and all the subsequent deaths and the sort of falling of the mutant underground and all the local safe houses and stuff like that Evangeline sort of dropped on him. But yes, putting up the stakes that getting away from Riva, getting away from the inner circle, not an easy thing to do. And in fact, perhaps death is the only way to finally get out. Either being killed by Riva or being killed by your friends. None of those are good. Line of the week comes from Clarice to Marcos. Next time you want to drunk dial your ex, make sure it's not the entire eastern seaboard. It seems like fair advice. Certainly drew Jace out there with that sign, but yeah. Drunk dialing under mutant powers, it just adds way extra complications to an already bad idea. Oh, and it looks like Clarice is going to be spying for Erg now. What kind of spying? A little extra info? Not entirely sure about that. But, you know, it's going to cause complications down the road with John. And just see it happening already. Oh, and it looks like John can be hurt. Takes a bit of doing, but it can happen. All right, well, I think that pretty much covers everything. And looks like next week we're finally going to get some good mutants versus evil mutants. Or let's just say Mutant Underground versus Inner Circle action. So really looking forward to seeing that. But that is going to wrap us up for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not. Quick and easy, one button hit. Won't miss any of these reviews. And we'll actually throw up a couple of our latest ones right here you can check out. So, that's it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.